Welcome to In the Room, where we explore the elusive world of casting for film, TV, and commercials. Join us as we interview directors, writers, producers, and actors, taking a deep dive into their experiences with casting and how the ultimate decisions are made in bringing a story to the screen. Get an inside look at casting and find out what really goes on in the room.
What was your relationship like?
Relationship?
Yeah. You get along?
You're 18 now. You said no to staying with us here at the children's home. You know what that means? You need to seek a job as soon as you can.
Growing up, doing my best just to fill my cup.
You live all alone?
For now.
You play things kind of close to the chest, don't you?
What does that mean?
It means you're secretive.
I know everything about you. You're a lot like me.
I don't hurt people.
Come on, hurry. You mean on purpose?
It's called fight or flight. Comes out of us when we sense a threat.
You know what we call it?
Call what?
Aging out.
What?
Emancipating.
All it takes is one little word, Richard, for me to knock things down.
What do you think the outcome of all of this will be for the person who did it?
I have visions of what happened. They haunt me.
Okay, well, here we are. I'm Heather Kafka, and I'm an actor.
I'm John Williams. I'm a casting director.
I'm Kendra. I'm an actor and the casting assistant to John Williams and Carmen Leach.
Today, we're in the room again.
Here we are.
I'm in my feels today because John had a birthday yesterday,
Yes, he did.
and I drank cocktails, which I don't do that often anymore. Actually, no, I think it's your birthday today, isn't it?
No, yesterday was my birthday.
Yesterday was your
Yeah.
actual birthday?
Yeah.
Or are you just trying to keep yourself untraceable from the stalkers online?
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, happy birthday.
Yeah, happy
Thank you.
birthday once again, John.
70.
70.
Doesn't look a day over
65.
29.
Yes.
Yeah. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
So today we are in the room with AJ Edwards.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much for coming. So let me just read you a little bit about AJ. AJ was born in Walnut Creek, California, and raised in San Antonio, Texas. In 2013, he wrote and directed his first feature, The Better Angels, starring Diane Kruger, Jason Clarke, Britt Marling, and Wes Bentley. That film centers on the formative years of Abraham Lincoln in the wilderness of Indiana. It debuted domestically at the 2014 Sundance Film Festival and internationally at the 64th Annual Berlin Film Festival. It opened theatrically nationwide in the fall of 2014. His second feature as writer-director was Age Out, a crime drama set in Texas, starring TYE Sheridan, Imogen Poots, Jeffrey White, and Caleb Landry Jones. Executive produced by Gus Van Sant. Age Out made its world premiere at the 2018 South by Southwest Film Festival and its international premiere at the 44th Deauville American Film Festival before being distributed theatrically in 2019. Edwards has also completed First Love, his third feature, a romantic drama and coming-of-age story starring Diane Kruger, Hero Finds Tiffin, Jeffrey Donovan, and Sydney Park. Today, we're going to talk to AJ about Age Out. Age Out tells the story of a young man, 18 years old, who has just aged out of the foster care system And now it's time for him to go into the world and make his life. And he finds himself in some challenging situations and makes some terrible mistakes, and then ultimately finds an impossible love in a friend. It's absolutely hauntingly beautiful, and some of the most amazing performances. TYE Sheridan, Imogen Poots. I mean, everybody is so quietly brimming with intensity, and there was something about empathy that I found when I was looking for stuff about you, and I think it's a quote from you that said, "Empathy is very important to me. I try to create humane, ennobled characters, even if your character is a criminal or an adulterer or a corrupt king. You must find that kernel of humanity in them. Shakespeare does that, and that is rare today." I think everything about Age Out speaks to that kind of empathy, because I was able to feel it for absolutely every one of the characters, even Swim somehow. So talk a little bit about where the story came from for you. Are you familiar with the foster care system, or like what was the first touchstone? Was it Waco? Was it an actor, TYE Sheridan maybe? What was it for you that brought that story?
I had thought of the story years ago when I was a teenager, and it was a composite of a few different stories I had read both in literature and then in the news. There's even a 60-minute special that talked about aging out, and I just thought it was a very interesting way to start a story. Someone that's just released into the world, and how are they going to now operate with few resources and all the temptations they would face. And so and then when you mentioned Waco, I knew that I wanted to shoot there since it's undershot, or at least it was at the time. I don't know if it has become more chronicled since, but it has so many interesting locales to offer, and variety in that way. And so I had roots there too, and really I've always wanted to film there. And casting wise, yes, I knew even before there was a script that I wanted to work with TYE Sheridan, who was perfect for the role and generously committed when the film was just a treatment. And then as I wrote the drafts of the script, I would share it with him and he would comment, and we'd toss ideas back and forth, and then he just remained on board.
And so how did you connect with TYE Sheridan?
I knew him since he was 10 years old, because of his time on the Tree of Life, where me and the producer of that film, Nick Gonda, were tasked with finding specifically the children in the movie, the O'Brien family children and then the neighborhood children. And so we spent 2 years going around to schools looking for young people, and specifically non-actors. Vicky Boone, the casting director, was to find actors, and then Nick and I had to find a lot of the roles that were non-actors. And so I just stayed in touch with TYE after the film, and then he went on to work with you and John on Joe with David Gordon Green, and then he's had a number of successful films since, and he was the perfect age and perfect type. I got him right at the right moment for this film back in 2016.
Okay, so that's the second time I've heard someone talk about going around to schools looking for children. Creepos. No, how does that literally, like, how does that happen? Do you call the school and say, like, how? Yeah. Say specifically how that happens?
I mean, yeah, you have to get a contact, or you walk into the school and you go to the main office and you tell them what you're doing, and then they help coordinate and organize. I didn't know you guys spent 2 years going around, so you definitely understand my pain, and you definitely understand when you ask me to go find real people.
I mean, like, do you just go observe and stand in the corner at lunch hour, or how do you do that?
I mean, what was your guys' process? They let you walk around, or did they had people that were interested come up, or?
Our model was based on There Will Be Blood, which did it in Marfa. But I think they, from what I heard, only visited really one school and then immediately found their boy and moved on. So based on the model they had created, we got a letter from the film office with this very kind of attractive seal of the governor that looked very official. And then on top of that we take that to each superintendent statewide, and then those superintendents that were open to us visiting their districts, we would then start conversations with the principals. And once you got through that gatekeeper, then you kind of had open access with that magic letter to explore the campuses. Some principals would let you roam, like you were asking John, and some you had a chaperone, and it all had to be very discreet. I never spoke directly with children during the observation process. It was always I would say, oh, the fella in the blue shirt in the corner, and then the chaperone or my guide would note them and then send that child home with a letter that they didn't know what the letter said, but their parents would then see, your child has been selected in consideration of this casting process. And then if the parents then chose to participate, they would then bring their child that weekend to like a civic center, where then we would discuss and put them on tape and tell them what was happening. But there were a lot of steps that would have to get to finally actually interact with the child and then see if they were appropriate.
So when you were doing that, what were you looking for? What do you look for when you were looking at kids? Like, I know I usually have a specific lens depending on the project too. And it's usually I'm looking for the kids that probably don't want to be on camera.
Totally. That was, and you and I still face that, John, is sometimes the person that you want is the kind of person that never would want to go to a casting call. Especially when you're looking for certain kind of rough roles or, things like that. And so, we were looking for boyishness, athletic, maybe even a little mischievous, thoughtful and intelligent, but maybe not the AP or honor roll student, and someone that could really be placed in a 1950s Texan locale, and it's believable. So the three boys we found, Ty was from Palestine, Laramie was from Wichita Falls, and then Hunter, the lead, was from Possum Kingdom. And all of them are very, very distinct and somehow work together as a family unit, but then all have their complete individuality. So it was pretty beautiful.
I'm interested in discussing your casting process because one of the things that's interesting is that you don't really do callbacks. That we didn't do callbacks on Age Out, and I don't think we did callbacks on First Love either. And so when you're writing, do you have something in mind, or what is your process when it comes to casting?
I think in terms of the no callbacks idea, it depends. There were some that we did a few callbacks on. I remember you and I
we had discussions, I think, yeah. Or you had people come back in with some notes for sure.
You're right that those that came back for callbacks there was a fewer number of those. But I am keen to move to a phone call or getting to talk with the person or hear from the person much sooner than some, as opposed to continuing to put them up in front of the white wall 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, and seeing the same thing over and over again, more and more refined. I know that works for some. That doesn't inform me as much as getting to hear from them and then, see how they're interpreting the material, which is usually because they're going off sides. It's very mysterious. They're just kind of grasping in the dark. So it's nice to, more quickly discover where their head is and how they're feeling about it, and see if there's an immediate kind of spark or a rapport between me and them, which is always very telling.
When you're writing, do you have something in mind usually, or do you have an idea of what this person is, or?
More often than not, yes. Yeah, I'd say so. Sometimes actors like that. They like to hear that you went to them with them in mind. Some of them hate that and will even avoid you if you say, I wrote this for you, or the type of, performer you are, I had in mind. They might feel that you're onto them and that you're cornering them. And so that you always have to play that dance and feel them out in terms of whether that'll be an attractive approach or not. And sometimes you write and the person you have in mind, you'll never work with, which is funny, some pie in the sky person, but still you just can't get them out of your head. So then you're up to finding a suitable alternative.
When you found Ty, had he ever acted before?
No, none of the children had acted, and which was great. They all were very naturally charismatic in their own way. And Ty's audition, if you can call it that, it wasn't really an audition because we didn't have them do lines. It was all just more about rapport, authenticity, and their just innate charisma. And so I think what we did with Ty is I think he and I played catch, and then I gave him a couple different props to hold and to see how he how that kind of informed his behavior in terms of when I was talking to him with a prop, say a ball, versus when he didn't have the ball. And they were based sort of on auditions I'd seen with James Dean or Dennis Hopper, or kind of actor school stuff where you can see the way that they sort of feel like they're in school when you just have them stand straight up and they have to, as opposed to when you throw someone in there that they didn't expect to be with, or you give them a paper clip to play with, or ask them to do something embarrassing. Suddenly they loosen up and they not only surprise you, but surprise themselves. And so with the children, that was the goal first, was to see their behavior, as opposed to say how much they can follow direction and recite lines, which came much, much later in the process.
So for Age Out, what was the first thing in the casting process? I mean, I know you already sort of had a commitment from Ty. And so then what was the next step for filling out the rest of the characters?
The next person we went to was Imogen. And she was filming in Smithville at the time, which was very convenient because like I said, or John had mentioned, it's, trying to form a rapport as quickly as possible rather than letting things sit with agents too long, or letting even the potential cast members sit with the script too long. I try to get into a relationship sooner because I find you have better luck if you can show that you're not insane, show that you're trustworthy, show, you can answer maybe some misconceptions they have about the script sooner, and just get the trust going both ways. So getting toward coffee or lunch sooner is very important. And that was what was convenient about Imogen shooting was it Country Called Home in Smithville. So I was able to go meet her. And
did you have to go through her agent first and call and say, is it okay if I?
Yes, yeah, went through her agent, but the script wasn't completed yet, so there wasn't something fully formed to share exactly. So it was really her rep's trust in my producing partner Nick Gonda, their trust in him to not connect their client with a psycho. So
AJ hides his insanity really well.
It's important. Yeah. I mean, it's a great quality in a director.
Yeah, I always think of that. These poor actors, how often they're walking into a situation that they don't know what exactly it is or who the people are.
Well, you don't either, because
I've been staring at the cast under a microscope, and I know all their movies and all this and that, and watching them, and then they walk in, they don't know anything. So.
But you only know them from their movies, and sometimes they walk in and we're insane as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. With Imogen, there are a few different connections of shared people that we knew. So in that way, I knew her a little better than just being a face on a screen through different actors that were kind to connect me. And then her time with Nick Gonda on Night of Cups.
How'd that coffee go? I mean, it obviously went well. We got her.
Yeah, it was great. I remember we talked a lot about music. She has a great passion for music. So we talked about the Smiths and different books she was reading. And so after that, we just stayed in touch about books and shared some, mixes and playlists and stuff. And then it went from there.
That's my favorite kind of relationship, over music mixtapes and books and coffee.
Yeah, the getting on the same page.
It's awesome.
Is nothing's better. Yeah.
Yeah. It very quickly establishes a trust that tonally we will probably be on the same page. And I think as an actor that's really helpful, because a lot of the times we're reading something and on the page it can sound like a story we've heard a million times, and you just don't have any idea how this director actually sees that scenario or what it's going to end up coming out like. Like there's a lot of just beautiful artistic interpretations and touches throughout Age Out that, speak to a very specific artistic vision that you wouldn't necessarily get on the page. Some of the stuff your cinematographer did, and I'm sure you had in mind, especially in Marfa, with different colors. And
that's all of AJ's scripts, though. Like you read it and they're good, but I have to say to people, I'm like, but you don't understand what he's going to do with
you have
this.
to see.
Yeah.
You don't understand how great he's going to make this and how beautiful he's going to make this.
I feel that's exactly what I'm trying to say.
And there's so much in that movie that it just isn't on the paper.
It's not on the page.
Yeah.
I would have never seen it coming.
I mean, even just from like the abandoned building and the library scene, and just how you filled just with the actions and just the moments and just in the silence. It was just like, it was just poetic.
It was so poetic, that library scene.
Yeah. That location was amazing.
Yeah, I was in touch with someone who shot there since then, and they were telling me the difficulty of trying to preserve that place and it kind of caving in and trying to get it acknowledged as a landmark of some kind, and all the bureaucracy they were going to keep it operational.
Okay, so Imogen's on board. What next?
Imogen's on board, and then next up was Finding Swim. And that was, I went, what's interesting with all of these is I'm very lucky, and this is not the first film that's had this, but it's always the first person I go to. So it was very convenient. This film especially it came together so beautifully, but it was casting Swim, and it was Caleb Landry Jones, the first person I wanted. I had seen him in Heaven Knows What, and read an article by Richard Brody of the New Yorker talking about this as one of the best, most exciting new actors. And so I'd seen him in that, and then Cronenberg's Antiviral. And so I called up his agent, and there was no red tape or any politics. It was just very easy to kind of get the project through to him. And he was shooting, I think, Twin Peaks at the time.
Was he also based in Texas?
He's a Dallas kid.
Yeah.
Yep. He grew up in Dallas.
Yeah, he's from outside of Dallas. I think he's from Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were able to, again, the connection was able to happen sooner rather than later. So it was wonderful to be able to meet him in Austin. And he did a wonderful thing that I'm very grateful for, and that I imagine a very rare thing for an actor. But right at the beginning of the meeting, I sat down and he didn't sit down, and he said, before we say anything, I just want you to know I'm in. And it just made we ended up sitting and talking. It was the longest first talk I've ever had. It was probably 4 hours, 5 hours. And we just sat there, and it was so nice. Instead of kind of feeling each other out like cats, like you usually do, it just was able to actually immediately connect. And it was just cigarette after cigarette on his part, and just actually getting into the role from meeting one. But it just was wonderful.
To the point, isn't it? He just showed up on a bus, right? On the first day
when production came.
Yeah.
He showed up, and he had the costume designer, who was a terrific artist, had prepared, you know, what she and I had discussed in terms of costume and some possibilities. But he showed up and had actually brought his costume already. He had gone kind of thrifting and already had everything that he wanted to wear and everything in mind and the way he wanted to look. And it was wonderful that the team, you know, the creative team, hair, makeup, wardrobe, were able to be malleable enough to kind of catch up to what he was already thinking rather than feel miffed or whatever that their work had been in vain, which it wasn't, because it ended up being a composite. But it was exciting to see how he would enter, you know, HMU tent or wardrobe tent, and he wasn't there just as like a canvas to be painted on by them for whatever discussions we had had for the last few months. He was very involved, putting this makeup on, putting this under his nails, taking this object and putting it in his pocket. It was as anybody in the room, it was very exciting to watch him work, because he's unlike anyone else in that way.
How did you feel about that? I mean, did you come already with an idea of what swim should look like and dress like, and then his was different?
His wasn't different. I thought his, it was unique to him and brought his own sensibilities, but I still think it was in the vein of what I was hoping for. We had talked about sort of like a mix of the aesthetic of My Own Private Idaho with Columbine. So that would be the sort of feeling. And so the costume designer and I were groping toward that, trying to feel out how to get there. Even going to malls and finding kind of skater kids in the corner, and I'd sneak a picture of them, or, you know, guys with flannel tied around their waist with combat boots, or jeans tucked into the boots, which is, I remember that was a thing we argued about a lot, was whether jeans should be tucked into boots or not. And everyone had a real opinion on what kind of people do that versus what kind of people don't. And we ended up doing it a lot with TYE. Again, part of that, I don't know, for some reason I associated with Columbine, but that was one of the feelings we were going for. But Caleb came and yeah, I thought his clothes, and the other beautiful thing is all the clothes he had almost already worn in, and they had texture to them, and the kind of things that costume designers work very hard to achieve. So yeah, I couldn't have been happier with it.
Yeah, I remember seeing this morning, watching it again, seeing the dirt on his fingers.
That's the first thing I saw.
Yeah.
It's the first thing.
He just nailed, I know guys, and I've been around guys like that in small town Texas, and he just nailed the danger, the sociopath, the just like
all the crazy.
Yeah, and just
the driving.
Yeah.
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 Like, I felt like that was very much a choice he made of, I'm going to drive and not look where I'm driving.
Right, like a maniac.
Like, for a long time, I'm just going to talk to this other person and not look at where we're going. But we get to see. So it's like, it's anxiety inducing.
Right.
You know?
You did such a great job keeping that anxiety on the screen.
For sure. Like the whole...
He also does an exciting thing that he comes to set on days off, which was very exciting. I remember before shooting, he came before his roles shot. He would come and just stand on set with not everyone yet knowing who he was, and I'm sure that had an effect on TYE. Not that TYE is one to be intimidated, but it's a little, I'm sure, funny to see your adversary in the film getting to watch you first, because then not only would he come to set, he would also come to dailies. And I remember he was watching what TYE was doing before he had a chance to do it himself, which was I thought very clever.
Yes.
And he was taking advantage of an opportunity that in my experience, not a lot of actors do. So,
especially in that role too, where it was just sort of like, you know, trying to get under his skin and take control of TYE. That is smart. That's real smart. Interesting.
Yeah, Caleb and I were both very mischievous in that way, because TYE is very, very intelligent. Can read a room immediately, like a politician. He's sort of like Ryan Gosling in that way, or like a George Clooney, which I think is one of the things that makes him such a great performer, is that he can immediately engage sympathy and that's just one of the great things about him and makes him such a lovable person. But because he's such a rule follower, a good person, all these things outwardly, it was fun with Caleb to come up with ways to needle Ty, and whether it's through an improvisation that Ty wasn't aware of, or changing blocking that maybe we had already agreed on, things that would drive him nuts and get him a little more rattled, which I think helped the character.
I think it came across for sure. I mean, knowing Ty and what a sweet guy is, I mean, he seemed like he was legitimately pissed and did not like swim near the end.
Right.
Yeah, we talked. It was fun to talk about that with him. The allowing yourself to be disliked, which I know some actors have strong opinions on, and I know Ty does too. But I've heard Tom Hanks talk about it. You know, that how difficult it is to allow the audience to dislike you or to do something ignoble, to debase yourself. And I think that's Caleb. He'll wake up and do that at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
He's like James Cagney, you know, like sticking the grapefruit in the woman's face. You know, Caleb will do it. He'll turn over the table like Ed Harris and Pollock or something. Actors like Ty or Ryan Gosling or Tom Hanks, they spent their whole careers, I think, wrestling with getting to that level of performance and whether they're comfortable with it or not, and what will happen to their image, what will happen to their career if they do that. And so that's always interesting to hear actors' thoughts on that.
I wrestle with that too, but I don't think it's definitely not my image or my career, but it's a Texas thing.
You think it's a Texas
and maybe
thing?
a little bit of a woman thing. It's a Texas, like, one of the very first qualities that sort of wants to come out in me is I want to make sure everyone in the room feels comfortable.
Oh, that's what you mean. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, just making everyone in the room feel relaxed and comfortable and
people pleasing.
People pleasing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something that I've had to work on as an actor.
You don't want to play the bad guy?
I love playing the
I
bad
say,
guy.
yeah. You know what's weird? Like when I was in high school and did theater, all the way through college for the most part, I got the Mean Girls role. Like I was the bad person. Even one of the very first plays, like out of college when I moved to Austin, I was on stage. I was the adulterer. I was like not the good person. Ooh. And then when I got to TV and film, I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. Right? So now that we're talking about it, I was like, oh, I didn't think about it. I mean, it was fun, but I guess like you're saying, like I was like, I don't want the world to think I'm a horrible person.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe it is a Southern thing, right?
It's like, something that I've had to like address from the get-go, because it's just a part of like breaking it all down to be in a relaxed enough place to not worry about judgment.
Yeah.
And to just give it all. Ugly too. But yeah, I mean, I don't get to play bad guys very often. In fact, I usually play fuck ups and drug addicts and women broken women on the verge of the end. So I'm like, if I get a chance to play like a normal ingenue, that would be fun. Like, I got to do that in Lovers of Hate, and I think that's why I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah.
It's because I never get to do that.
Yeah, they're fun roles.
What are your favorites to write, AJ?
Good versus bad, you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, definitely bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and that's also something I think I'm more interested in exploring going forward. So,
I find myself drawn to it as a watcher. Like, I've thoroughly enjoyed watching Caleb, because I think what he did was incredibly unique, and that's what excites me, is watching somebody take a villain or a bad guy or a dark person and not play them the way you've seen them play, like what they actually do with them. And I just found what Caleb did with Swim was just like masterclass. I mean, the way he managed to still invoke a sense of complete and total chaos while also being really like internalized about it. It felt like the chaos was just always brimming underneath, and then occasionally came out, but even still, not really. There was something kind of fluid about his insanity.
I've hung out with Swim many times.
John's like, I've been Swim in a past life.
They're fun guys to be around to a point.
To an extent, yeah. I was like, to an extent.
I mean, he nailed it. He was great. And then who was next? Was it Jeffrey that came on after that?
It was Jeffrey and Brett Butler, whom you brought to the table, John, and after our discussions of who would be best, which I thought was like a perfect strike that you threw in terms of, because she doesn't have much screen time, so she has to linger in the mind. She has to haunt us and haunt Ty, and be believable within the fabric of the story, given how specific the location is. And so Brett certainly brought that from day one. All that's not only in her personal history, but just her approach to acting. You could feel it just when she came on set, which is always an exciting thing when a day player arrives and changes the complete dynamic of a film. I always love that, the way they disrupt and the way that they have to dive in, not knowing what all has been captured before. But the bolder, the better, which is great.
She seems really brave in that way.
Michael Shannon in Revolutionary Road. If you remember that character, the way he just comes into that family and explodes it in his little time. But day players can sometimes do that.
Yeah, I was real excited when we got her and that she came in.
That's definitely a masterful stroke of casting on your part.
Yeah.
Agree. Like, just she has like that kind of, she also has that inbuilt sort of Southern weight to her in her voice and her just face.
Might have been a Carmen idea, but we're always looking and we're saying who haven't we, who haven't we seen, who could bring something in, and we're like, oh my God. Yeah.
So wait, so how did you guys ended up connecting for this? Like, before, because I know you were talking about your top casting, you kind of already knew Ty and all that stuff. And obviously you went kind of non-traditional, like for your top cast, right? Did you come in during that process part? Or he got the ones he wanted to an extent, and then you jumped in, you and Carmen?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think he Imogen and Ty and Caleb were on board, and then I think we were still working on Jeffrey and everybody else. And then we did traditional sessions. We had saw a bunch of people. There's some stuff that got cut that was really some people that were great and didn't make the final cut. But there was a fairly large casting, traditional casting that went.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Like, did you guys?
And it was it's fun because you allow for such freedom and exploration, and to create moments that necessarily aren't in on the page, and to try to. He allows us to like play around a lot, which I really appreciate.
So like Jeffrey Wright plays the police officer, which could have been played by a gazillion types of people. Like
that police officer.
Well, did you come up with Jeffrey Wright pretty quickly, or?
I mean, I don't know the story behind Jeffrey. That was all AJ, I think.
Yeah, he again was the first person we thought to go to. And luckily he said yes. We had a few points of personal and professional connection where it made it somewhat convenient to go to him. He, at the time, was more involved in theater and then his political activity. He hadn't done Westworld and Batman and kind of this last 7 years of the Jeffrey Wright explosion. That hadn't happened yet. He was being much more kind of family oriented and had his own ventures that he was pursuing. And what we just tried to do was beg him and then make it as easy as possible to say yes, in terms of accommodating his schedule and doing that. He had a few certain things that he wanted to do in Texas anyway. And so we just tried to just really roll out the red carpet in our pathetic Waco way. And then it all worked out. But he's another person that is unlike he's very different than Caleb, but he's unlike any other actor I've ever worked with in terms of how he prepares and or in some ways doesn't prepare, which I don't mean that as an insult, but rather is like an open vessel when coming to the set and wanting to absorb things. And it really took time in terms of him finding the voice that he wanted, the posture he wanted, the objects and mannerisms that he wanted to follow. And so Jeffrey was very keen in terms of observing the Waco police that we were shadowing and whose help we were benefiting from. Jeffrey was very attentive to them. Although he dresses nothing like them, he took a much more tactical, cooler approach, which I'm glad he did, because I don't think the denim and the cowboy hats and boots and buckles would have been as Jeffrey, nor would they have been as original. So,
okay, but you did have a fellow officer during the interrogation of Ty who just sits there and takes a little bit of notes at one point and says absolutely nothing. And please tell me he's a real police officer or an actor. Which is he? He was so good just sitting there.
He's neither. He was our gaffer.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
Yeah, we loved him. Everyone on set loved him, and he had such a. It was hilarious. We couldn't stop laughing at how perfectly he is believable in that role and not saying anything and being intimidating. And
totally,
he had a little notepad. He's like,
and he was just listening, and he was just perfect. I couldn't take my eyes off him in the best way.
Yeah,
it's like surely he's the real deal.
Well, and Jeffrey picked up too, because he felt like a Texas cop, you know. I mean, he in that voice, and he really brought that gravitas. And I know that he kind of found that when he got there and he started to put it all together, but it really worked so well. Did you have a lot to say, like when he was trying to discover it? Were you guys going back and forth on ideas, or?
No, I was pretty hands off. That's one of the scenes with Ty and Jeffrey are scenes that featured a little bit more traditional coverage, meaning shot, reverse shot, and the rhythm that those kind of interrogation scenes require. So as opposed to a more fluid camera or handheld or doing things in a master. So in that way with Jeffrey, we shot Ty's side first, which is usually polite to do to an actor that's new to a set. And that way, shooting it over hours, Jeffrey was able to experiment a lot off screen to figure out what he wanted to do. And with all his little micro adjustments and everything that he was trying out, I could just feel him, figuring it out and making something better than I had even thought of. Because, like you said, Heather, a million people could have played him. So I'm so glad that he brought something much more nuanced and idiosyncratic to the part, as opposed to the standard, cable TV cop.
Well, and that's a wonderful thing that you did. I mean, I know it is customary to shoot the lead or whoever first, but to give him that space to be able to explore and find that, because sometimes when it's reversed, that's what ends up on film for me. And then we turn around on the other person and I'm brilliant.
Like, dang, you're right.
Like, shit, can we do my close-up again? Because now I got it.
Totally.
So I can feel how Jeffrey would appreciate having that time to figure it out, because sometimes it can be really hard with a role like that, that you've seen on screen a million times, the police officer who's out to get the kid or the bad guy or whatever. But you have to, you really want to find your own individual voice and color of the character. And that can put extra pressure. And so, I don't know, having that time to play. I just also, from watching the film, feel like you probably allow that in your set daily. I could be wrong, but it feels like you allow actors to create in the space. Like you give respect to that. You give time for that. Would you think that is accurate, or are you over there going faster, better?
No. I like to think I do, because that's what's fun for me. I have no interest in going to set and just making sure everything that happens is fulfilling what is in my head. That really doesn't interest me. I'm much more interested in being surprised, being amazed, having someone take something that I started and finish it, making it better, doing things that I never could have imagined. That I love that much more than sort of the I mean, these are wonderful filmmakers, but much more than like the David Fincher, Wes Anderson thing, where actors are sort of coming on and stepping into a template and an incredible design by a genius filmmaker. That I think is, you know, the kind of Hitchcock way. I think that interests some filmmakers. I've heard Woody Allen can sometimes be that way, where that there's a story with him and Meryl Streep where he walked over and he said, there's a comma in the line. And she said, I know. And he said, well, you should read it then like there's a comma, you know. But that kind of like that kind of filmmaking, although it can be masterful for some, that's just not who I am or what I want to pursue.
I mean, I feel like and there's so many great moments that are created in your films of just allowing for that sort of discovery. You know, just there's so many quiet moments and so much that you let things breathe that come across and add to that poetic sort of feel.
Yeah.
That is, I think, an AJ quality.
I mean, I also think it just starts with the fact that you sit down beforehand and just to talk and have coffee, right? Because then, like you mentioned, like the moment that you build that relationship and have established, you know, them getting comfortable, it allows them to have a little bit of room to play on set and be comfortable doing that, knowing that that's what their director already set the precedence of from the beginning. So, I mean, from an actor's standpoint, you know what I mean?
I think you give me a feel that we're working together, and I'm not working for you. That we're creating something together. You give an environment like that, which I think is super. Yeah, collaborating, which is super appreciative.
Yeah,
it's very generous. I mean, I think that, you know, it can happen and probably does happen quite a bit, but also does not, because I think you have an idea of what you want, and you know that this is a medium that you can't create that idea yourself. It's going to take a lot of other players. And so I think it's probably easy to be like, but all of you players have to act the way that I need you to act to do my vision in my head. And so I think it's really cool that you are able to, you know, stay open to it. And for me, that is what allows those moments to happen on screen, for people to just be in that space, and then they play around and unique things come to the screen.
I was going to say beautiful moments can
are memorable and aren't just, you know, a rehash of moments we've seen before. So bravo, AJ, we love it.
Or my question, is that premeditated, or is that just, or is that something that you intentionally?
He's a mastermind.
I think it comes from, I've been very fortunate to not miscast a film yet of the 3 that I've made. And that's the thing I've been most fortunate with, is, which I guess is the thing that a filmmaker can be most fortunate with, is casting it right, which, to give Woody Allen a nicer quote, which he says is 90% of making the movie, just cast it right. But if that freedom that hopefully actors enjoy on the set, and the trust and being open to things like improvisation, or can I try this, or can I try that, changing rhythms, changing directions and blocking, talking more, all that as a result of casting the film correctly. Though that amount of trust and the director maybe having to express more control may be a result of, unfortunately, miscasting the film, either intentionally or unintentionally. Intentionally because you need the money, and someone says, if you cast this guy, the movie gets made, and you go, oh God, okay. And you know that you're miscasting the film, which I've seen before. Or you do it unintentionally, which then you get into production and you go, oh Lord, how do I fix this? And either you can micromanage on set, or then you're having to fix it in the edit, or even on production, if you're a big shot, you know, like P.T. Anderson or something, 2 weeks into filming, you can fire the person and then replace them, and then reshoot everything. So that trust, I think, comes from casting properly, and it's not fully just a part of the director's personality. So hopefully that trend of casting well continues for me.
Do you feel those kind of pressures to cast certain types of people, names, to get your films funded, or to do things like that? Like, is that a pressure you deal with?
No, I've never cast a film with someone and the understanding was with this person it will get made. I've lucked out in terms of wanting a certain person, and that person is valuable. So the kind of default thing was that they get made, but it's also first and foremost that they are appropriate, and I did want them. But I know of other films, I've been part of other films where it really is like a menu, where because your film requires this budget, because it's a bigger film, you know, the movies I make are very small, but I know some people, oh, if your movie costs $20 million or $40 million, you know, you'll need these 3 people to get it made. And then the director and the producers have to sit and think about, well, yes, we will get the budget we want, but will it compromise the integrity of the film because we're knowingly miscasting it? There are sometimes, you know, it's exciting when you cast someone against type, or maybe you're stretching them and doing something that they've never done before. You know, for example, Cillian Murphy in Oppenheimer, I'm sure that wasn't who producers initially wanted because he's not a marquee name, but by bringing him into the leading man role, that was very exciting. And so doing unusual casting can have its benefits, but I mean more when you know that I don't want to name an example because that would be bad, but you know,
we've been very fortunate. I mean, we've been very fortunate with the 2 movies I've done with you to have just a phenomenal cast for the price that we had, the money we had to make it. And I think that's just a huge testament to AJ and his filmmaking, and when people meet him and his understanding of film and his visions, and you know, he's one of the directors that I feel so confident introducing to people and trying to get people on the phone with him.
That's cool.
Yeah. And he's built really good relationships too, I think, with most everyone that he's worked with or people that know of him.
So did you do a lot of traditional casting? Like, okay, so I'm thinking of at the very beginning of the film, there's those people who are telling their stories of what got them in foster care.
Those were all real foster care kids. I think we found, and we went through the network for that. And then Chris England in the church, he's a real foster care kid, and it was a real speech.
Wow, that was great.
Yeah. I was there that day with Chris because Chris is a wild card, and so just make sure Chris didn't go off the rails. But he did awesome.
He was going to punch you.
Yeah, he was awesome. Yeah, there was a lot of, I think, real people used throughout the film.
Well, they were pretty fantastic. Those real people telling their stories.
I remember the voice, the gentleman's voice. I forget who he ended up on, but that was a big concern of yours. The gentleman that opened the film, getting that voice.
Yeah,
right.
I was on the receiving end. All the people that you just named, that was the equivalent of just an envelope that I was opening in terms of who John was finding after weeks and weeks of searching, be they actors or not actors. In the case of the foster kids, those were all non-actors. And so we were just seeing who would best express the world, because it's the beginning of the film. So they're really setting the tone. Every time I see Chris England, I always think there's an alternate form of this film where Chris could have played the Thai role, which is interesting. You know, in like a Harmony Korine way, or maybe Harmony Korine 20 years ago, but like there are other filmmakers that could have made that work. And Chris is so exciting. What he did on set in just a couple of hours.
Yeah, just that short moment.
Yeah,
It's like, who's that guy?
Yeah.
So how did you do? Did you just interview those people? Did you put them on tape and then show him the tape?
I think. I mean, Chris and other ones. Yeah, I think so. I don't remember. I remember we were dealing with the foster care system and going through it and talking to kids. And I don't remember if the kids that ended up in were put on tape, or we kind of, you know, he got to talk to them. I don't remember about how we came across some of those kids. Chris, I was familiar with. I've known Chris for years. And then on the day, I mean, AJ was telling him, he's like, no, start fighting, start punching, you know?
Yeah.
All right, start talking, start punching. It was great. It's magical. It's so great to watch. Yeah.
And then you did have a whole big bucket full of extras for no money. How'd you do that? You just said
friends and family
come hang out.
I mean, at the hotel was actual hotel people staying at the hotel, right?
Okay.
A lot of the people.
The motel at the end.
Yeah.
Those are real people in the rooms. But the hotel at the is it the Driscoll?
Yeah. Was it the Driscoll, or was it the one in Waco? I thought that you did. Where'd you guys shoot the ballroom?
The hotel where
he worked.
Ty and Caleb go to visit that woman Mona is the Driscoll.
Oh, that's the Driscoll. Yeah, we found her. She was great. But then all the extras at the ballroom scene, like the New Year's Eve party, that was a lot of friends and family.
That was
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
And Peggy, and I think Peggy shot. She did the extras, and she did great, phenomenal job getting people, wrangling people. Yeah.
Because that's not easy to do when you have no money.
I mean, there's nothing about that movie that was easy. I don't think.
Maybe that's why it's so beautiful.
I think so. I mean,
struggle.
I remember. I forget what was it. Someone was in the trailer, and they were talking about a movie, and it was the Leonardo DiCaprio. Revenant, or what's the one where he was in?
Is it Revenant?
Revenant, yeah. And
where he's in the snow with the bear.
And everybody in the trailer was talking about it, and he was like, "Yeah, it's all right." I'm like, these guys tried to kill themselves to make this movie. What do you think people are going to say about ours? like, have some respect, man.
He's like, it was all right.
Yeah, it's all right. I was like, they shot in
the snow for hours and
I was
days.
like, and your review is, it's all right.
Isn't that wild? I always think that, movies like that shoot for a whole year, and they're actually like chasing the winter across the globe, and it doesn't matter how epic your story is. It all comes down to people going, well, I give it 3 out of 4.
Yeah. More popcorn, please.
Exactly.
You know what we've found and what we're seeing talking to filmmakers is that the most beauty and the best film comes out of these sort of pressure cookers that we're in, that we don't have a lot of money and we don't have a lot of resources, and so we have to get super creative. And I think that's one of the things that you're great at as well too, is like making just beautiful things out of what you have to work with.
And it's so fulfilling at the end of the day, right? It's like now we have everything all of the time, and people are desperately unfulfilled and unhappy. And, my daughter struggles to be bored because she can always stare at something or whatever. And I'm always trying to tell her, I'm like, but right on the other side of boredom is creativity. Like, that's where it lives. It's like not until you're bored out of your mind do you go, well, okay, what else could I do? And then you create something instead of just sedating yourself with all this media every time. It'd be great if we could create boredom and struggle.
Does she have an interest in following you?
Absolutely not. No. She's like, that's what I don't want to do. But I think that's because, she's in a world where, there's a lot of anxiety and, financial insecurity with me and my husband. We're both artists. And so there's a lot of, the struggle not paying off versus it paying off, and her seeing like why it was worth it that mommy followed her heart. She sees that like once. But then the rest of the time she sees me crying over the mortgage or whatever. So she's just a little bit in a world right now where she's like, I think financial stability is better to have in life. So I think it's just rooted in that. But unfortunately, she's got my husband and me in her. So she has a hugely empathetic heart. She's not going to be able to deny it for very long.
Good.
I have a question for you, AJ. When we're doing Aged Out and you're casting it, are you looking at the film as a whole? Like for me, when I'm casting, I'm just going, I'm putting it together. Who's right for this person? Who's right for that person? How are you viewing a film when you're casting it? Like, how are you thinking about when putting all these pieces together? Like, is it as a whole painting? Are you looking at specific performances, or what's your process when kind of drilling down and choosing actors?
I guess first thing that speaks to me just visually is the physicality. Sometimes when I receive an audition, I'll mute it, just so that I'm not immediately hanging on to say cadences or voice kind of mannerisms or affects, and just I'm able to just look at the person and start responding to them without being inundated with I'm very sensitive to voices, and so that's one thing that I'll just try to watch them first and absorb them, and then start listening to them especially if it's an audition of they're doing lines that I've written. Sometimes that can become rote and feel old, like stale. And so you start, because then you're judging your own lines and going, well, that's stupid writing. and then you're not giving the person a fair shot. And so it's like, if you had them say someone else's great writing or something, then maybe, so then that's what the voices and the talking sometimes throw me off. So, but then once you get over all those things, I think it's just trying to choose a person that'll honor the character they're playing, be faithful to that person's humanity, and fit into the slot that they need to fulfill in terms of the cog of the story, and whether they have a conscious understanding of what they need to do in the film, or whether it's unconscious and they're just naturally like a gift to your movie, which is what sometimes happens, especially with non-actors. So in terms of the whole, I don't think I have a complete view of it. No, not at all. It's really more going with a gut instinct, and trying to trust that more and more, which you just want to make decisions that don't make you feel sick. I find that a lot, like when you're accepting money that you shouldn't accept. Or like I said, back to casting, when you're suddenly are casting someone that you shouldn't be casting, and you're losing sleep over it. Those kinds of things are what I want to avoid. It's making decisions, whether it's in terms of crew members or cast members or story choices, that you're making decisions that you can live with and that are faithful to the overall goal, no matter how mysterious it is.
Do you feel like there's a thing that you're doing when you direct actors? Or do you feel like foundationally you've laid the groundwork by these getting to know you meetings and whatnot, and then you're just letting them do a thing?
Probably the latter, I guess. I'm very proud of the performances that have been captured in these movies, and I think that they're very unique in the filmographies of these different actors. Because in some ways, I think that the few films I've made, I've cast people that are sort of already of the mold of the character they're playing. There's something in them that is being let loose by playing this role. I'm not asking them to kind of Lon Chaney it and put on this mask and this makeup and this humpback, and which is a great art unto itself. But so far, that's not really been tested of the actors we've been talking about. So I think, I guess somewhat of the old cliche that directors like to say, I think is true in terms of what I want, which is creating an environment where they feel free, where they trust that you won't make a fool of them, where they know that in the end you're gonna pick the right take in post-production, and that they trust that you're keen enough to see what they're kind of spiking for you, and so hopefully you receive it. Because I've talked with some actors where they actually had to get involved in post-production because they didn't like the way their performance turned out. These are for kind of big actors that can do that, where they felt, you picked every single wrong take, or you didn't even understand what I was giving you on set. You're too blind to it or something. And so you hear these horror stories where even if, all the brilliant work that the actor's doing, that doesn't matter if come post-production, if the director or the editor is not savvy enough to be collecting it all and gleaning, and separating the wheat from the chaff or whatever. So I guess that's just, I guess as a director you want to remain vigilant, and you have to be vigilant not only on set, but that vigilance in terms of protecting what the actor's doing has to be throughout the entire process, even to marketing. You can make a film and finish it well, and then all of a sudden when it's distributed, they can misconstrue what the movie is, or take the performance and cannibalize it to serve their marketing needs in a way that misrepresents what the film is and can make the actor feel self-conscious. Even things like the size of them on the poster.
Yeah. Do you
that
have
that's
a
come about.
do you have control at that point as far as like what the poster looks like?
I usually make my own poster and then try to get it out as much as I can, uh, in my own little way. And then the distributor makes their own poster, and the same thing goes with trailers. I make my own trailer and release it, and then they make their own.
I kept Aged Out was called Friday's Child, and I kept the Friday's Child poster. It's the one that I have that AJ made
In the casting scene?
Yeah.
Yeah. It is Friday's Child. I remember that.
Yeah. Yep.
It was being called Friday's Child.
I mean, I think that happens a lot. I think First Love fell prey to that as far as the marketing. But yeah, I think it happens a lot, you know. First Love's such a beautiful film, and I don't think that they captured the essence of it in the marketing.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting casting story where John and I couldn't have been more separate, and it was all just phone calls. And John, what was it, in 3 weeks or something, John cast
First Love, yeah. It was during
that was
COVID.
amazing.
Yeah, it was during COVID. It was a ton of roles, and it had to happen super fast, all over tapes, all over like Skypes and all that kind of stuff. But we were shot in LA, just phenomenal cast, just so many great performances in that.
John was like, he was hanging his head. I remember you were so apologetic and going, "Oh, I don't know," because I think you were just.
I went through like 3,000 tapes in a matter of like a week and a half, and I was at that point I was just so dizzy and lost, and I was like, I don't know what's good, I don't know what's bad, and like you got to help, I'm sorry if you're watching stuff and you're like, this is horrible.
No, it was like someone had just struck the jackpot and was going, I don't know, I get so I had to tell John,
I don't know what I'm going to do with this $1 million. I don't know.
Yeah,
these are all the numbers.
Here's the $1 million.
Do you find that it's affected you in any way, this common practice of us mostly auditioning via tapes as opposed to in the room, or are you still able to be in the room? Like as an actor, I'm finding it incredibly difficult to actually make connections and get work when the majority of the time all I get to send is this one tape. And it just goes off into the ether, and there's no feedback, and there's no actual like exchange of pheromones or anything in the room. It's nobody is like drawn to me as a person. I just better nail whatever performance they think they want to see, and this is my shot, and it's via tape. And I think there's an extra element of casting someone when you are talking with a person as opposed to just seeing them perform the script. Do you find that?
Oh, for sure. No, it's very limiting the way that we're moving more and more toward it just being a screenshot essentially, and the person gets one moment to nail it and be a mind reader for what the film is looking for. And if they don't, then you move on. So I think, being in the room, having a rapport with the actors, and then giving feedback to change, make minute changes that can have incredible effects. I think all that's important, because you hear stories, or at least I have, of actors returning in disguises to casting sessions where when first they were rejected, they come back and look different, and then the director goes, "Oh wow, this person's amazing," and so it all had to do with something the director had at lunch that day that made him less aware. Or there's something about maybe the chestnut hair as opposed to the auburn hair that just stupid personal bias that can make someone blind. And I've even heard that with big known actors, where it's like they came back and they were able to fool the team, and then it is legendary what they went on to make. So
I did have a run where I decided I was just going to be British because British actresses were getting all of the roles.
Did you have a good British accent?
Do I have one?
Yes.
Not today. But I did. I was like, what if I went into my auditions and I was just British? Then would they automatically think I'm better?
They would.
Yeah.
See? Okay. Well.
Yeah. I remember hearing, I think it was either Peter Coyote or someone talking about when you go in, you want to spill water or trip or, do something that makes you immediately identifiable as, oh, that's the guy that spilled water on himself, or that's the guy that dropped the sides, or you want to do something like that to get in their heads so that you immediately have a color as opposed to just being another name on the sheet.
That's amazing.
Do you have like I guess too, an enjoyable part of casting and then your least favorite part of casting?
I mean, the joyful part is the beautiful thing when an actor that you've been pursuing says yes. When you get that call, either from the agent or, like I was mentioning earlier with Caleb Landry Jones, when they say, "Hey, I'm in." For all the burden that's placed upon actors and all the pain that they go through trying to search and, like you say, make a living and get these parts and auditions every day. There's also the flip side of the director knowing that the movie can only exist with certain actors. So when you do get that yes, that is definitely the most exciting moment in terms of when you're pursuing name talent. The other most joyful moment is like when John, you and I were talking about when we're doing either non-actor casting or maybe people that aren't as known. And after 1,000 folks, you open up your laptop and it just immediately everyone knows in the room that you found the right person. Because you're doubting yourself after 1,000 people, 3,000 people, you're going, I'm blind, I can't even tell anymore. But then sure enough, when you see the right person, everyone in the room goes, that's it. And they can tell that they've struck gold. And so that moment when you find something that you didn't even know if it existed, and now you have physical confirmation of it, that the part's going to be embodied in a brilliant way, that's just so satisfying. And then in terms of worst part of casting, it'd be the flip side. It'd be rejection. When you get that, you thought that the coffee meeting went well and you thought, oh, they might say yes, or they really seem to respond to the script and they told you everything they liked about it. But then a week later, you get that dreaded phone call or that email that says, it's just not going to work out. I'm so sorry. I've got a lot of commitments this year, and or whatever it is, that always really stinks. And so it's important to rebound from that very quickly. Because I know some filmmakers that have had it so stuck in their head that, oh, it has to be this actor, it has to be this actress or whatever, that they don't rebound from the rejection, or it makes them blind to other opportunities of other actors or agents or whatever option is knocking on their door, and they can move on from that. But so you have to rebound fast.
What advice would you give to actors auditioning for you?
It may sound trite, but to never give up, because the pool only becomes smaller. When you're looking for a 20-year-old whatever, you get 5,000 submissions. But when you're looking, and then when you look for a 45-year-old whatever, you have fewer submissions. And I know that sounds trite to say never give up, but as a director and having been a person that receives the results of casting calls or reaching out to agents and so on, like the pile is physically so much smaller that if you stay with it, you will see the results of your patience, your time, your sacrifices, and your effort. And I remember hearing Ethan Hawke talk about that, how he was saying, when he was 20 years old and he's competing against River Phoenix and Keanu Reeves and all these kinds of things, it was very disheartening when you go to that. You're going to a casting call with everyone else, and then River Phoenix is going up to accept his Best Supporting Actor Oscar, and yet you guys both came from the same acting school. Those kind of things can be disheartening. But obviously today, I don't know, what is he, 50 or something? Ethan Hawke has this wonderful career that everyone looks up to, and it's not because of 1 year's success or 1 year's Oscar or something, or one performance. It's from the longevity of it, of how long he stuck with it. I heard Matthew Broderick last week say the same thing in the New York Post. He was talking about that the 90s were very hard for him. And so here he is, a great respected legendary actor that's talking about decades, some being better than others. So I think that's sticking with it. And that goes for directors too. I mean, I think it's about it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's about your endurance, and not everyone will make it. So therefore your chances, if you stick with it, only increase.
Can I just have AJ around all the time, like just in my pocket? Like, just give me that little pep talk.
I like that rah rah, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things you say to me, because he has so many great projects that we're always trying to get going, is that it'll get made when it's ready, when it's time. Like you have faith, your faith seems to be unwavering, you know, and you seem to really believe. And then sometimes I'll say, I said one time, I said, yeah, well, not a lot of people saw it, and he goes, but the right people saw it. I thought that was cool. So I now go and say, we make films that nobody watches, but the right people.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Yes. I appreciate it, man. We took up about an hour or so of your time, and this is there's lots of great nuggets in here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This has been very fun. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, you make beautiful films, and so you too keep doing it.
Yeah, can't wait for the next one.
Thanks so much,
that.
AJ. We appreciate you. All
Thank
right.
Thank you.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks for joining the room.
Thanks for joining us. Probably go to your Instagram, TCS in the Room podcast.
And we have to figure out how to promote this thing.
Link in bio.
Yeah.
Click on all the platforms, wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in.